this is Heidi Muyeso-Kunzman with the Community and Regional Development Institute at Cornell University, and I'm really pleased to have everybody join us today for today's webinar on attracting and retaining young adults, research and initiatives from New York State. And I'll just say that I'm particularly pleased to be talking about this topic because we've had a lot of communities that we've worked in across New York State who have expressed interest in this topic and who are working to think about ways to keep young people in their region and draw more folks to it. So we're excited to be doing this. This is the 6th webinar in our 2010 Sustainable Communities webinar series. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the Sustainable Communities webinar series, I just want to mention that it was developed with the recognition that New York communities, like communities everywhere today, face great challenges, but at the same time, great opportunities. And given this context, the series was designed to address topics of interest to New York communities and the extension educators and other community developers working within them, as well as legislators and other local leaders. So we've chosen these topics with the goal of providing information that facilitates informed decision-making at the community level, that is, information that helps communities identify, pursue, and achieve their development goals. With each webinar, we try to bring together a campus-based research or extension professional, a community-based practitioner, and/or an agency representative to provide you with an overview of the subject matter and resources for further information. So in this webinar, we're very fortunate to have Scott Sanders, a PhD candidate in the Department of Development Sociology at Cornell, Sean Lukasik, a consultant with Pipeline for Progress, which is a regional economic development initiative in the Southern Tier, Nita Hawkins, a program coordinator for Livingston County's Office of Workforce Development and the Youth Bureau there, and then finally Carrie Malone, who's the executive director of Livingston County Business and Education Alliance. So again, we're really pleased to have everybody here. Scott will start us out describing some recent research in the Department of Development Sociology, along with Cardi, that we've been working on with support from the U.S. Department of Commerce's EDA University Center. And then Nita, Carrie, and Sean will follow that up with descriptions of initiatives that they are pursuing to connect young people in their communities, and when I say young people, we're talking K through 12 students and college students, college-age students, young adults with workforce opportunities that they have been engaged in. So a couple other things before we get started. Because the webinars are in some ways relatively anonymous, I just want to give you a little bit of information about those of folks who are joining you for this particular webinar topic. If everyone is on or comes on that is registered, we have about 19 people registered for today. Most of these folks are educators with the Cornell Cooperative Extension System. We also have a few participants from other community service organizations like Department of Aging, some economic development organizations, including Chambers of Commerce's, Meals on Wheels, and even some local legislators. So this is just a sampling of who's on, and I may have missed someone. So please feel free to enter your affiliation or the program that you work in into the chat box if you want to let us know you're out there. So before turning the mic over to Scott, I just want to remind you that the webinar will be approximately an hour and a half, and we'll have times for question and answers both after each speaker or set of presentations, and then at the end we try to save a little bit of time for more general Q&A and discussions. Please use the chat box to pose your questions, and if we don't get to it right when you've sent it, we will take it at the time that we've set aside from it. But if you do have a question that's a point of clarification, one of the speakers just said something that didn't make sense, send it and we'll try to address it right then so we can make sure everybody's still following along with us. So the final thing I'll just state is that after doing several webinars, I know that technical issues arise. We seem to have gremlins that occur every once in a while, so while these are great opportunities to reach a lot of people in their own places, sometimes things come up. Don't worry about it. We'll try to work through it. Just stay with us. If your computer, if you suddenly lose us, sometimes we find that folks can get out and get back in, and that works effectively. So just let us know, and we'll try to support you at this end as we go along. So with that, I'm going to pull up Scott's presentation, and we'll get started. Any questions, just let me know again and pop them in that chat box. Okay, Scott, with that, we'll get started.
Great. Thanks, Heidi. And I just want to thank Heidi for all the work she's done to put this together, as well as everyone at Cardi for helping get this webinar organized. This is some research that I've been doing with David Brown and Max Pfeffer, who are also professors, both professors in the Department of Development Sociology. It's on the residential expectations of young adults in New York's Southern Tier. And this came out about kind of like what Heidi was saying. There's a lot of people were asking, how do we keep our youth in the area? What's going on? Do we have a brain drain? What kind of characteristics are the youth attracted to and influence their decisions when they're looking to either stay in the area or to leave for educational and professional reasons? So that's how this research began. We had some support from Cardi as well as Pipeline for Progress and the EDA Center here at Cornell. Like I said, the purpose of this research is to understand where young adults expect to live at age 30. This is after they've completed schooling, they've started to have families, get married, have kids, and are done with their education for the most part, and looking to establish themselves professionally. So this is a time where people are at age 30. They're starting to look to establish roots in the area, and to really be part of a community. And so that's why we're looking at their expectations at age 30, and also to understand what kind of influences the decision of young adults in the region when deciding residential expectations. Are there certain economic, community, and environmental characteristics that play a big role in deciding where to live and to work, or are there other community attributes that we're looking at? And upstate New York, like many rural areas, has a problem of retaining and attracting youth. This is commonly known as brain drain. And we wanted to look into this a little bit more to see how we can help identify factors that could help retain youth and bolster the Southern Tier. The research strategy of this project is multiple methods. First of all, we looked at we wanted to have a study that reflected across the region. We just didn't want to look at specifically rural communities or urban communities. So our study reflects a diverse number of schools and community sizes across the Southern Tier. The first stage of the research was done with a number of key foreman interviews. We interviewed local leaders, school superintendents, to try to get their feeling of what is going on in the decisions of young adults. Then we conducted 3 focus groups with high school seniors at the time. We met with a college-bound group, a non-college-bound group, and a mixed group. And as I'll mention later, there was a significant difference between these groups on where they expected to live and what factors influenced their decisions. So the second stage of this research, we decided to use a survey. So we surveyed the 2008 graduating class of 4 high schools in the Southern Tier, in the P4P region. And young adults, particularly right after high school, are very geographically mobile, and so we had to come up with a way of contacting them. When we asked the high school students about using a hard mail copy, mailing out a survey and having them fill it out and mailing it back to us, that was almost a foreign idea to them, because the young adults these days, they're much more on cellular phones and the internet. So we decided to use social networking websites as a way to deliver an online survey to them. So we used Facebook and MySpace to deliver a link to our survey online. And for those students that didn't have a Facebook or MySpace account, we spent hard mailings to. But we have found that there was actually about a 90% coverage using Facebook across these high schools. And we found, as I'll show a little bit later, there wasn't really a bias in the response, which we were initially worried about. So this gives you a map of the P4P region that we did our research in. We interviewed 4 high schools across the region, 1 in a metropolitan, and in counties throughout the Southern Tier. See, there's a question on that. So we try to get it all throughout the tier, and we weren't just concentrating in one county, but we had four high schools across the Southern Tier, 1 metropolitan, 1 small city, and 2 rurals, and these are the students when they responded were in the beginning of their sophomore year of college, or they had been out of high school for a year, so they had kind of been able to see what's out there and make some decisions regarding their education and their professional experiences. So some of the observations we got from the first part of the study. First of all, we interviewed four schools district superintendents, two BOCE supervisors, two local employers of large employees, both of a professional corporation and more of I guess more of a blue collar company, I guess you could call it. Two high school guidance counselors, and also the staff from the Rural Schools Research Institute. And by and large, what these leaders said, that it's jobs. Economic factors are driving the decision for young adults to move outside of the area. But it's not necessarily simply just jobs and availability of jobs in the area. There are other economic factors that played into this decision of economic factors. So one was housing. This was particularly a problem with when we met with HR representatives trying to bring in professional to the area. This is not only the quality of households, but the housing stock and the diversity across the region. A lot of times they had interviewed professionals they wanted to bring in the region, but because they wanted to live in a suburban type of environment, they weren't able to. They were discouraged to live in the area. They weren't able to find housing for that. So housing was a big part of that, of the factors attributing to whether or not someone would move back into the area. Transportation was a big problem, especially for the young adults, and this is for a couple reasons. Number one, it limited their economic labor markets. So if they lived in one community, and even if there was a job they qualified for in the next community, oftentimes they didn't have the ability to get there because of lack of transportations. And not only was it a lack of transportation being able to get to the job, when we met with some of in the focus groups, we met with some of the students, because they knew they couldn't get to the next town over, they didn't even look for jobs there. So they weren't aware of economic and employment opportunities that were just 20 miles away. So transportation is a problem, especially in some of the more remote areas of the region. And community resources. Oftentimes, people pointed out that even if their community resources were there, oftentimes the young adults weren't aware of them. And because they didn't feel there was a support structure for them within their community, they were looking to go outside of the region to find that support structure. The next point of this is that there was a lack of role models of people who had gone out of the region and then returned back into it. A lot of the young adults, when they heard the stories that they could go back and come back and get a job, go out of the region, get an education, and come back, but they didn't know anyone personally who had done it. So because there was a lack of role models, they weren't able to see that was a viable option for them to go away and then maybe come back to the region. And then the final point is what we've really found is that ideally when the young adults are making decisions about education, about residential expectations, about professional careers, they're doing it in an environment where there's an interchange of information between schools, between family, and between employers in the community and the region. And what we found by and large were that young adults were making these decisions by themselves. College-bound students, often when we talked with them, they were making decisions about where to go to school almost entirely by themselves, finding information about it from their friends and online. Parents and counselors played a very limited role in that. And part of that is because counselors either lacked the training or just were so overburdened with having to help so many students that they weren't able to give the kind of time that they needed to individual students. Second, employers had insufficient links to the schools. If there were, we met with a corporation that they needed workers, the training could be done locally very easily, but they had a hard time finding adequate labor. And part of this is because when we talked to schools, they weren't aware of it. There wasn't a link between employers in the region and high schools that were developing relationships. With some exceptions, with Corning, Lockheed Martin, and Wegmans being good examples of that. Wegmans, for example, would have people working for them as stalkers and picking up the shopping carts in high school, and then continue to have that relationship by giving them tuition assistance in college and having them work for them over the summer when they came home after college. And it's established kind of a relationship and between them, and Wegmans has done a very good job about being able to get people go to college and then come back and be their managers and run stores for them because they start their relationships early on. Corning Inc. does the same thing with internships, and the last bullet there indicates that internships have been a very effective way linking students with the career opportunities. So again, this next slide shows an ideal situation of how young adults could be making decisions that influence where they expect to live and their professional and educational decisions. But we found there's actually there's insufficient linkage between all these groups, and that is a significant part of one reason why youth are looking outside of the region. So the second part of our survey, or of our research, was the survey, and so this just gives you an overview of who responded to it. We had a response rate of about 38% with no initial evidence of bias. When we looked at the characteristics of the respondents, we thought we might have a bias against the rural schools because of lack of internet and computer access, but across the areas we found that it was pretty consistent of a response rate. And overall, we see that there's the self-reporting that most of the students were A and B students. The next slide, with 85% of the high school graduates attending a 2- or 4-year high school, 4-year college in 2009. The next slide here shows the breakdown of where they're attending, either a 4-year, 2-year, or other, or not in college. We thought we had a bias here, but when we called back the school districts, apparently 2008 was a great year for college-bound students, and although the numbers might look skewed here, they were actually representative of what the school districts reported for their students attending secondary education. When we look at residential expectation at age 30, I want to clarify, when I talk about the region of a hometown, that's the P4P region that the map I showed earlier. So if they lived in Western New York and then they moved closer to, say, Binghamton, they would be coded within the same region. But if they lived somewhere in the P4P region and then decided to move to New York City or, the West Coast, they would be coded as someone who was living outside of the region or expected to live outside the region. So when we asked all respondents if they expected to live in or outside the region at age 30, a majority of them indicated that they expected to live elsewhere, with about a quarter expecting to live in their hometown region and about another quarter undecided. Now that we had that basic kind of baseline marker of what we see of people planning to leave the region, we wanted to know what affects that decision, why there's so many of them expecting to live outside of the region. So we wanted to look at the community they're from, their post-high school education experience, and their perceptions of the economic possibilities in the region, as well as efforts by leaders in the region and communities to try to improve the area. And then finally, we'll go over some of satisfaction of specific characteristics within the region. This is to show you that when we look across the type of hometown, there isn't much difference between expectation to live in their hometown region or outside of the region. We thought there might be some geographic differences, but in here across the board, it looks like the majority of the students expect to live outside of their region. When we look at the type of post-high school education experience, 4-year institutions, those that are in 4 institutions, have almost 80% of them expect to live outside the region. One reason for this is we feel that when we met in the focus groups, a lot of them wanted to be professionals and doctors and lawyers, and they didn't see, or they were unaware that there was a market for those services back in the region, so they were looking to go elsewhere, either to get the professional training and then maybe to work in a bigger metropolitan market, perhaps. That difference is diminished when you look at 2-year programs. So that in part is because of some of the vocational training that's available in 2-year programs is something that can be immediately implemented within the region. And the other reason why that's so skewed is that includes military, where we had a number of respondents who were in the military and already living outside the region and expected to continue to do so. When we asked the respondents their overall perceptions of the economic conditions and job prospects in the region, almost half of them expected it to be poor and awful. So they don't have a very positive picture of the economic conditions and the prospects of getting a good job in the region. You can see there about 33% still are undecided, and only 15% reported it being good or outstanding. And so again, this is going back to what we found with the interviews and the focus groups, that it's jobs that are driving this exodus of our young adults from the region, and they have a very poor perception of the economic possibilities for them in this region. Now, again, whether or not that's true, this is just their perceptions, that they perceive that there's a lack of opportunities for them. The next slide is we broke down their perceived economic conditions of the region by residential expectation. So the first column there, you see the blue says that if they think that the area is good, that they feel that they have opportunity for them to get a job or they have good conditions, then they expect to live within the region. Over 60% expect to remain in the region if they feel that there's good economics for them. If they don't feel that way, if they have either no opinion or they feel it's awful or poor, then by far we see the opposite occurring, that they expect to live outside the region. And again, this is consistent with what we found in our interviews and what other people have found and have expected all along. The next slide is looking at the association between efforts to improve the region and residential expectation. And again, here I want to emphasize this is the students' perceptions. There might be efforts going on in the community for them to improve it, but this is if they perceive it or see it. And so this is getting at the next speakers of how we'll talk about some wonderful programs of where they've been able to get students involved and shows the importance of helping the young adults know what's available to them. If they see that the area is, if they feel the leaders are trying to improve the area, about 50% are willing to remain in the area. If they don't see any sort of improvement, and it gets really big if they see that they don't feel the leaders are trying to do it with not improving the region, then overwhelming, they expect to live outside the region and go elsewhere. They're not willing to stick around and see if things get better. And the final kind of data I'm going to show you here, what we had a number of characteristics about the community. We grouped them into 3 different indices, economic, environmental, and community. The economics were questions like good paying jobs, cost of living, clean environmental conditions, accessibility to outdoor recreation. Community index included things like quality of schools and proximity to family and friends. And what we did is we first asked them, well, how satisfied are you in your hometown? So in this economic one, how satisfied are you that there are good paying jobs in the area? And then we asked them, well, how important is that characteristic in the community you expect to live in at age 30? And then we compared that in a cross tabulation against residential expectation. So this next graph, I'll just kind of walk you through. The first one you see here, they perceived poor economic characteristics. So they perceived that their community had low levels of economic characteristics, or they were poor, and that was something that was very important to them. So no surprise when they don't see that there's good economic conditions, and that's important to them. 90% of those expected to live outside the region. And if they perceive the region to have good characteristics, good economic characteristics, and that's something important to them, over 70% said that they expect to stay within the region at age 30. The next is the environmental index, and this is something we were interested in because a number of people said that they were trying to market upstate New York's the rural life, the great outdoors, the outdoor amenities that we have in the Finger Lakes region as a way to attract youth and keep them in the area. And so if they perceived to have poor economic characteristics, and that's something important, again, no surprise, over 70% expected to live outside the region. However, if they perceive the area to have good environmental characteristics, and that's something important to them, still a majority expected to live outside of the region. So environmental characteristics alone aren't strong enough to reverse that trend of expecting to live outside of the region at age 30. And the last chart here is the community characteristics. So if they perceive the community have poor or low community characteristics, and that's something that's important to them, again, they expect to live outside of the region. However, if they perceive to have good characteristics in their home region, and that's important to them, the trend reverses. And over 60%, almost 70% expect to live within the region. So this gives us strong evidence that it's not just jobs that are driving this. There are social factors that play an important role in the decision-making and in residential expectations for young adults. In particular, the strong ones that we found in this are proximity of family and friends. Those by far were the strongest social indicators that made a difference in deciding, in young adults when deciding where to live. So in conclusion, young adults have a clear expectation of what they want to do and where they want to live, and they're making these decisions very, very early on. Granted, they may change, but they're making an initial decision to move, and a lot of them to live outside of the region very early on, almost in high school and in college. And again, most of them expect to live outside the region at age 30. The expectations to live outside of the region are in part a response to low economic conditions and perceived lack of jobs and opportunities in the region, a lack of confidence or unawareness of local leaders in efforts to improve the conditions, and a dissatisfaction with community resources in general. But finally, and I guess the good note of this is that it's not just simply economics. There are social factors like proximity, family, and friends that can be used as a way to help attract young adults into the region and retain them after their education. And that's what I have, and so if we have time, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yep, we do. And one of the questions that came in a little bit earlier, Scott, schools that were part of the research, and you may not.
Yeah, unfortunately, we cannot because of confidentiality regions. I can say that we consciously try to choose counties throughout the region, so we would get a representation across the region. It is a small sample. This is a pilot study. We're hoping to follow this up. But unfortunately, because it's such a small sample, I can't divulge the schools where we worked in.
I think related to that, but I think you may have addressed it in the slide. What were the numbers of students that were part of the survey?
We had 123 respondents responded to our survey, and we surveyed about 300. So it was about a 40% response rate, which sounds low, but that's actually pretty good these days, especially when we're working with recent high school graduates.
Okay, and Bev just sent in one. What social factors relative to community were important to the participants other than their proximity to family and friends?
Schools was a big one, and then cultural events, and then that was classified as being able to have, having places to hang out. And so that's, places to go, like restaurants, concerts, or the other big ones. But by far and large, family and friends was the big one. And if we did a factor analysis, those would be the ones trumping it. And then also quality of life in schools would be the other ones in the social factor. Oh, and child daycare. Sorry, child care was another one.
Okay. Do we have any other questions before we move on to the next speaker? I'll give it just a second and make one comment. I think what struck me about Scott's presentation was just the importance of perception, and in some cases the disconnect maybe between what the reality is as we're out there in the field and knowing the work that some companies are trying to do to connect, and that some schools and other organizations are trying to do to connect students, and yet there's still, it isn't happening in some cases. And so I think I found some of the work that the next couple of speakers are doing to be really helpful in understanding the ways that folks are addressing this disconnect and trying to make perception fit with reality. So,
if I could just follow up on that, that was one thing that, especially the focus groups, we would go in and we had our questions first of all because we wanted to find out what their their opinions were, and then afterwards, oftentimes we had time just to talk with some of these students. And because we had been working throughout the whole region, we knew a lot of opportunities for them. We would say, well, hey, have you looked at this town and this job or this program? And a lot of them just weren't aware of it, and they're like, no, that's great. And so it really was this, I mean, we didn't have a real way to measure that statistically, like how much is a perception, but just anecdotally from working in the focus groups and the interviews, there was a lot of just not understanding. And it was interesting where some communities were tied to other larger communities, even though there might have been another community, a large community that was closer to them. There were certain relationships where they would go and look, if, say to Binghamton as opposed to Ithaca, even though they may have been closer to Ithaca. And so there really is a big, the perception and getting this into the young adults that there are opportunities is something that I think we can't overstress.
Okay, and I don't see any other questions that have come in yet, so if you do have them, we can follow up on that hopefully at the end if we have time. We're going to move on to the next presentation. While I'm getting that loaded, I'm also sending you a link to Scott's email address. He's happy to take questions through there as well if you would like to know more about this. So with that, let me just pull up the next one. Okay, and we have Nita Hawkins and Carrie Malone on next. Go ahead, Nita and Carrie.
Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon. We wanted to just, our presentation is really more the implementation of some of these types of things that we've been talking about, ways that we're working here in Livingston County to partner together, pool all of our resources, and make this a community that our young people will want to come back to raise their families. We know that they have to leave for educational purposes, but we want them to come back, and we want them to see this as a vital community.
My name is Nina Hawkins, and I work with the Center for Workforce Development and the Livingston County Youth Bureau. The workforce development, we are a one-stop in the county, meaning that we are partnered with Department of Labor and House Together and several other agencies come in and out to help us serve the unemployed and underemployed. So we work closely with everything from planning department to economic development, businesses, and small and large employers. That's federal funding under Workforce Investment Act. And we have the Workforce Investment Board here is a four-county, Genesee, Livingston, Orleans, and Wyoming. I'm also a youth bureau, so it's kind of a split department, and my focus is primarily on youth. And a youth bureau, we're charged with looking at all the services and supports in place for youth, like 0 to, we used to say 21, but now we say it's really up until 24. So it's very broad, and my connections through the community are very broad. And one of those being with Carrie Malone as the vice president of her board for Business Education Alliance.
Okay, and the Business Education Alliance in Livingston County is kind of an unusual entity in the fact that we are a nonprofit group, but we are work in conjunction with all of our school districts, and so to help make that transition for our school districts work a little better, we also partner with BOCES. So we are a affiliate with BOCES. We have been in operation since 1991, and we were started by a group of local concerned business representatives and educators who felt that there really just was not a connection between what businesses wanted their employees coming to them, what skills and training they wanted them coming to them with, and what our school districts were teaching. And then also as a part of that, as a kind of a branch off from that, was that we realized that a lot of our kids coming out of our school districts really just did not have an understanding of what career options were available for them. So the BEA was started, and our mission is to facilitate a beneficial partnership between business and education to prepare productive citizens. Basically, kind of that in a nutshell is that we are, as Scott had earlier mentioned, we are the link between the education world and the business world for our kids. And also we're kind of a liaison between both so that we can facilitate communication to make sure that everybody is getting their needs met. This next slide is really just something that we felt was very important because here in Livingston County, this is something that I think that we do very, very well here in our county, and that's partnering and collaborating together. Collaboration is really not just kind of a buzzword that flies around in the county. It really does work here. And because I think part of that is because we are a rural county, and we realize that if we want to offer to our communities everything that we can possibly offer, we can't do that alone. We have to partner together, pool our resources and our ideas. And so this is a kind of a graphic representation of that, and you will see on the left-hand side of your screen, there's in the green boxes, there's the Board of Supervisors, which is kind of our governing agency for our Livingston County. And then under that is the Youth Bureau and the Office of Workforce Development, which is who NITA works with. On the other side is BOCES, which is the governing body of our educational system here in Livingston County. And under that, we have the Livingston County School Districts, which in Livingston County there are about 9 or 10 of those. And then the Business Education Alliance, I mentioned, is a branch off of BOCES as well. And then all of the outside boxes are the outside agencies in the blue, are just the agencies that we partner with and we work with to prepare our youth, to provide programming for them, and to provide as many opportunities that we can to our community members. And I think that's really key because I think if you want to have a really vital community and a community that's thriving, You have to really talk collaboration, not competition, if you want that to succeed.
And how do we know what to offer to our teens and to our children and our community? We have several resources to gather information and decide what we should respond to. We use needs assessment, employer feedback, and those connections that we have through here with workforce and that Carrie has through her board members and connections to the BEA. Certainly feedback from schools, comprehensive and strategic plans. Under that, the Youth Bureau does like a 3 to 4 year plan of integrated services in the community to make sure we have the supports, opportunities, and services necessary to help our kids become healthy adults. Then there's some other mapping processes or comprehensive planning processes that go on in the county. One is under the Department of Health, and that's a huge process that we're just completing for the second time, called MAP, Mobilizing for Action Through Planning and Partnership. Then knowledge of other agency resources. Again, we're small enough that we kind of know everybody and know what they do and try not to duplicate. Looking at what funding sources are available, and Carrie will talk in a few minutes about something she went after and received, which has been a phenomenal project. And then the community mapping. Some of the tools used are surveys, like we said, relationships. One of the pieces that we use, it goes back to what Scott was saying about community perceptions. We have a resource called Healthy Communities That Care, which is connected to Council of Alcohol and Substance Abuse Prevention. But we survey in our schools for protective factors and risk factors for youth. And one of the key questions has to do with community disorganization. And it's basically youth looking at their community and feeling whether there's a sense of cohesiveness, if there's opportunities there, or if what they're seeing is, rundown buildings and no hope. And we actually, through those surveys, found that we rate fairly low on that risk factor, and so it's important that we change the perceptions of our youth about what kind of opportunities they have here.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, as Nita said, perception, and how do we're rating kind of low on that with our kids. So one of the things that we have to do is make sure that, after we gather all of this information and we know what our kids need and we know what they are looking for, that we develop effective tools to help them change, or to help change that perception with them. And we kind of have a feeling that we've done a pretty good job of that here in Livingston County. And, they revolve around a variety of things, and you'll see those on the screen. But one of the things that I want to mention affiliated with the screen is the fact that hands-on learning that can be tied to real-world work and real-world experience is really what is most effective with kids. Every teacher out there has, gotten that age-old question, when am I ever going to use this? But whether that's, calculus or a science problem or, English sentence structure, whatever it might be, we are working to help students to understand when they will use it and to be able to provide that teacher with the opportunity to say, well, if we look into the career of architecture, that is going to tell you when you're going to learn this. And then we provide them with the ability to bring in guest speakers and send their students out on job shadows to see these practices or these learning tools in practice. And what we found is that really through this kind of career awareness and career exploration, we can prevent a couple of things. First of all, one of the statistics is that 75% of students will change their majors after entering college, which is a huge, huge amount. 75% of kids that start college in their freshman year will change their majors. It ties to a lot of money, and if you're a parent, you don't want to see that bill coming. So we've been able to actually start lowering that number here in Livingston County because our kids are a little better prepared because they've gone out and they've done some of this career exploration and career awareness activities before they've made their decision. So the next slide talks about the relationships, that relationships can create programs. So, you know, we talked about partnerships and how to do this. And the one thing that I always kind of try to tell people, and this is kind of how I live my life and do my job, is that if an opportunity comes up and jumps up in front of me, I'm certainly not going to run in the other direction. I am going to snap it up and take the ability to run with it and do something really great for our kids. And you'll find that as I talk through these next few programs, that we've actually done that with a few things. So the first program that I want to talk about that was a huge, huge opportunity for our students here in Livingston County is Bridge to Employment. And the program was actually, it's an initiative of the Johnson & Johnson Company, and it was started in 1992. And really the way that this works is there are 12 sites worldwide. Johnson & Johnson provides the local operating company as a resource. They provide financial resources, and then they also provide an overseeing agency and resource called the Academy for Educational Development in Washington, D.C. And there are very few guidelines. There are a few goals that they want you to meet, and they want the program to be focused on math, science, and healthcare careers, and they want to make sure that their employees are involved in the program. Other than that, you can structure the program any way that you want. And if you get onto the website, which is going to be a resource that's available for you at the end of the our presentation, there are actually very, very different programs all over the world. Our program, we wanted to do as much as we could for our kids in the time frame that we had them. So let's talk about the kids that we chose first of all. There was a target audience for this, and we wanted to look at what is tagged an at-risk student. But at-risk can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So we actually had 13 indicators for selection for our students, and our kids had to meet 2 or 3 of these indicators to be considered for the program. They were things like that they were the first-generation college student, they were from a single or divorced parent home, their socioeconomic status, they might have been an academic need student or at risk for dropping out or frustrated with the school structure. A lot of our kids, because they are very hands-on learning students, were very frustrated with the typical structure of a school day. They might have been a social outcast or have lack of social skills or were facing bullying. They were an agricultural-based family because agriculture is the #1 business here in Livingston County, so a lot of our kids, that's all they have known for careers. A lack of exposure to a lifestyle other than a rural lifestyle, so they've never really been out of this rural area. A lack of knowledge about the college process, a family tragedy, anger management issues, English as a second language, part of a transient population. We have here in our county what is referred to here as a golden triangle, and it's 3 of our communities that have very low-cost rental and housing opportunities. And so what happens is people will move into these communities and stay there as long as they can afford to pay the rent, or they will stay there as long as they can without being able to pay the rent. And then when they're evicted, they will then move on to another community, and they go between these 3 communities. Well, what happens is that students are popping in and out of school all the time, and so they're missing out on certain academic needs that they are extremely important to them in their future. And then the last one was that they were a part of a minority group. So those were the 13 indicators, and as I said, our students had to have 2 or 3 of those to belong to this group or to be considered for this group. They also had to do an application process which included 4 letters of recommendation, 3 from a school, different school personnel, and then 1 from a community member who knew the student outside of the school setting. The focus for the program, again, was related to math and science and healthcare opportunities, but we took it and we actually talked about soft skills with our students. That was the very first year that we introduced that, and our first year activities all revolved around that, and we did things like presentation workshops and PowerPoint trainings with them, communication workshop trainings. We did a teamwork building where we did Teamworks at Cupa College, which if you look at that first picture on your screen, that's our students doing one of the challenges there. And that was the very first thing that our kids did, and because our kids were from 7 different school districts, we had to really work hard to build a team family feeling between them. The second year, we started really focusing on career awareness and career exploration and college exploration. So we did a lot of workshops. We did 10 college visits with our students. We did 3 college overnights where we actually took our students onto college campuses, and they stayed for a full weekend or an overnight trip and stayed in the dorms and ate in the cafeterias just like a college student would do. We did job fairs. We did some distance learning with our students. Our students were able to view 2 distance learning events, a heart transplant and a kidney transplant, where they were able to talk back and forth with the doctors and the operating room staff. And then one of the really interesting things that we did in the second year, which is the picture on the far right with the young man in the orange shirt, is we took our students up to RIT, to the Center for Bioscience Education and Technology, which we refer to as CBET. And at the CBET Center, our students were actually able to go into a gross anatomy lab. They were able to handle human hearts and lungs and see the difference between a diseased heart or lung and a healthy heart and lung. And for our kids, this was extremely exciting because, again, this group was very hands-on. They all were looking to going into the science or the healthcare career field, and this really kind of either secured them into going into that field or made them realize that this probably was not the best career choice for them. We had a young man who was certainly wanted to be a doctor and passed out after he smelled formaldehyde for about the first 15 minutes and saw his first heart. He was on the floor and decided that, maybe medical field was not the best area for him. And then our third year, we really, we called it our college boot camp year, and this was where we really ramped it up and helped these kids prepare for college. Each student was assigned a mentor from the Johnson & Johnson Company. Those mentors helped our students to do everything from filling out financial aid package, college applications, and writing those college essays, to choosing what was the right college and the right fit for them. One of the really important things, we started this program with 30 students. We have 25 students who graduated from the program. 75% of those students graduated with this program with 12 credit hours or more for college, and that was paid for by this program, so those 12 credit hours or more cost them nothing. 21 of the 25 students are currently in healthcare majors at college. 22 of the 25 are in 4-year schools, and 3 of those students are in 2-year schools. So, again, this was really an opportunity that we just kind of fell into. But again, if you see that opportunity, it's something that you think is going to be good for your community, you need to snap it up. You're going to find that a lot of the programs we're talking about today are really very healthcare focused. And that's because 2 of the biggest employers here in our county are healthcare related, our county nursing home, and then also our local hospital. And they came to us a few years ago, actually about 9 years ago, and said to us, we really are not getting qualified candidates and we have a lot of job openings that we can't hire people for. Can you help us to encourage kids to go into the healthcare field? So we've partnered with them on a lot of different programs. One of the ones that we are still is a huge success is our Health Careers Exploration Day. And this is really a very basic beginning introduction to the healthcare field for middle school students. And it's done a full day event. We do it with small workshops, large group, small group activities, and hands-on activities. And they're very short snippets, fast-moving, because the 6th, 7th, 8th graders don't have real long attention spans. They spend about 20 minutes with someone in a healthcare profession. They do a hands-on activity. They talk to the person about their healthcare career. They ask a few questions, and they move on to another session. Throughout the day, they'll see about 13 different healthcare professions, and they'll hear about those. And then what we try to do at that point is we then funnel those students from healthcare Careers Day who said, yeah, this really kind of interests me, I'd like to learn a little bit more, and we funnel them into other BEA programs such as our summer camps and our Bridge to Employment program that let them explore the healthcare career field even further.
around the same time that that was being developed, the workforce and we are partners in the county. Also, we're looking at the need for healthcare workers, and we did connect with GCC and BOCES and several other organizations to really start to market that. I know at that time our WIB office created a number of high-quality marketing tools, and in the 4 years since we, or maybe it's 5, that we started that that promotion, we have filled those classes both at BOCES for LPN, at GCC for LPN and beginning RNs, and filled a lot of certified nursing assistant positions here in the county, and some of those with training funds through workforce development. Under workforce development for youth, we have the year-round youth program and the summer youth employment program. These programs are targeted to low-income youth with barriers to employment. Those barriers can be pregnant and parenting, involvement in the juvenile justice system, disabilities, youth with that are dropouts or struggling to finish school. We run a huge process to have them apply, especially for summer. A lot of marketing to schools and connections to agencies that would refer kids in. The kids are primarily 16 to 21. They're both in and out of school. In the year-round program, our goals are for kids to reach their high school diploma if in school. If they have dropped out, for them to then, the goal is to get their GED, to hopefully get them into some post-high school education or training that leads to employment or certificates such as CDL, LPN, even the CNA. Summer, we intensify. So here we had last year for 2009 when we had stimulus funds, we put about 170 kids into placement in the county. This year we had about 99. We combine it with some state TANF funds, which broadens the number of kids that we can serve, but 90% of them are low income. So the kids are placed around the county in paid work experience. Our relationships with agencies and businesses in the county is very key. We can do both public and private. Some of our favorite private ones are, we have a company that does butchering, and the kids can't use any of the tools there, but they can help to market and clean up. But it's an interesting job opportunity here in the county. But also with some of the nursing homes, we have a residence home, private residence home here that they also work in, and a lot of maintenance positions with the schools, and food service with a couple different companies. We have what we call job opportunities meetings in both the year-round and the summer employment. In those, the kids are taught job search skills such as resume building and how to search, retention skills, getting along with others, team building exercises. They explore career paths, and field trips to local businesses and industry. And those field trips are key because you're really letting them know what kind of companies are here in the community.
The next few programs that we're going to talk about actually are not directly out of our office, but they're from they're from organizations that we work with and that we really felt kind of hit the kind of mark of this webinar. So we just wanted to point them out to you. We're not going to talk extensively about them, but we are going to provide you the information so that if you wanted to look a little further into them, you can. The first one is the Young Entrepreneurs Academy, also called YAY. This is a grant-funded opportunity for students, and it's grant-funded through the Kauffman Foundation. The program is run in conjunction with our local college, SUNY Geneseo, and its classes are held right there on the college campus. Students learn everything from writing a business plan to marketing their business, and then they are partnered with local kind of experts in the business field from Livingston County who've been through this. They've developed their own business or they run their own business now, and they come in and they talk with these students, they mentor these students, and help them to really get a good grasp of what it's like to be in the business field. And then these students develop their own business plan for an idea that they have, and they launch it. They have a competition where they can earn funding for their business plan. A couple of actual programs that have come out of this from our area. One, we have a young man who actually has gone through both Nita's office and my office for other programs, and he's really a very motivated young man and a very determined young man, and he had come up with an idea for a youth center for Livingston County, focused here in Geneseo, which is our county seat and kind of the center of the county. And it was really for the kids that maybe didn't have a lot of things to do in school. They weren't really into sports, or their interests weren't being met at the schools. And so he wanted to come up with some activities, some things for them to do that would meet their interest and get them involved. And he actually just opened the youth center about 2 weeks ago in partnership with our local Goodwill, who also is a new business in our community. The other idea is the young lady is actually at the bottom of your screen in that picture, and she came up with a DVD called Young and Fit. It's an exercise DVD for young kids, helping them to learn about exercise, healthy nutrition, staying fit, and that was actually picked up by Wegmans. She's a freshman in college this year. It was actually just picked up by Wegmans, so they are selling that video now, and she is also in the process of writing a book. So two results of this where kids had some really great ideas, and because of a little encouragement from adults, they were materialized. The next one is ISI Western New York, and you can see that their theme is Stay Here, Go Far, Careers in Life Sciences. This is a website that it can serve as a resource for young people, and it's an opportunity for kids to get into this website, and there's a variety of things they can do, and they really focus on careers in the biosciences. So students can go in and talk about the thing, they take a little quiz on what are the things that you like to do, what are you good at, and then they match those with a particular career in the biosciences. The really very cool thing about this website is that there is a listing of companies in Western New York who have job opportunities in all of these careers that are highlighted on this program. And I said Western New York, this is Buffalo, Rochester region. They actually are working on one for Steuben County right now, and that should be coming out. It may even have been launched already. I'm not absolutely positive. But it talks about the job opportunities all in these local companies right here. And then they also talk about the education and the career pathways on how to get to those careers. So we're talking about the careers that are here in our county. We're talking about the educational opportunities to train you for those careers that are also here in this area. And it's just a very interactive, interesting resource for youth.
This project was not started through us, but we're connected to many of the organizations that have completed it. But it is a perfect example of community revitalization, a community whose Main Street was dying, back to that community's organization that kids were seeing, felt that there really wasn't any place to go there. And this little village, one of the key people, they found a philanthropist that sort of adopted them, but along with that, they were also able to receive a good amount of community revitalization funds that our Economic Development Department helped them to apply for. So at the same time that all this, Main Street front building, the facades being painted and new businesses moving in and being really given opportunities to start something there, some other things were going on, and that is they wanted something that really involved the whole community. And the college was involved in this whole process, the community marketing there at SUNY Geneseo. There's was a professor who had her students have projects where they connected with the businesses, helped them brand, helped them build everything from their logos to their menus, if it was a restaurant, a motto, you know, some advertising that was connected to their logo and their themes. And these college students were like paired with each business. Then they took it a step further and they connected with our local BOCES, the metal trades class at the Career and Tech Center. And these kids, the students there, the high school students, then worked with a college art student and this marketing class and created metal angels that represent many of these businesses and not-for-profits on Main Street in the village. These angels are, I mean, if you look at the pictures, and we'll give you that website later too, it's being built as we speak, they're not small. They are anywhere from 3 feet to 5 feet high. Very interesting. There's about 30 some of them. And these will be auctioned off in February as a fundraiser for a local hospice home. But this project was just amazing for these kids and just really helped them feel connected to the community, part of this whole renovation. For the college students, they were able to find out about businesses in a local small community. Some of these kids never get off of SUNY Geneseo campus, and now they know more about our whole county. And I think key is that youth were recognized as an asset to the community. They became engaged in the community process, and they experienced hope in their economic future here. Some of our conclusions and discoveries through all of our process is things that any community can pick up and do, and that's collaboration yields shared responsibility, increases the opportunities for youth. It's important for youth to be engaged in hands-on learning, that youth are engaged in communities and mentoring relationships with adults helps to really change those perceptions of both the adults and the kids, and bring on that sense of community, that the community recognizes youth as an asset and then wants to hold them and change the risk factors, reduce the risk factors and improve the protective factors for them to have more positive futures. And then, again, back to that perception, you see the community as a good place to live and are introduced to local careers. And here's our resources. Some websites, the Carey's Business Education Alliance and the Bridge to Employment, Livingston County. One is for the departments here with workforce development, their summer employment. There's some photos there. ISI Western New York, which is an excellent resource for educators, businesses, whatever. And then this is the one that's being built about the Angels, the Mount Morris Angels, which is I think there's some other articles out there if you Google, but that's this particular website not only shows the Angels, but it has a lot of quotes from the kids about the process and what they learned. Okay.
This is great, Carrie, Anita. Thank you very much for sharing all that, and you put a lot into a short period of time. So thanks for doing that. I think one of the things that just strikes me about the group, the programs that you're working with, and the partners is just the intense partnerships and the level of support and relationship building with the young people that you're working with. So I think it's really impressive, and it seems like it's got to be a lot of work. So, and I'm going to post Nita and Carrie's email here in just a second. Do we have any questions for them? Okay. If not, we'll move on to Sean, and let me just get this sent out. Let's do this. Okay, Sean, go ahead.
All right, great. Thank you, Heidi. So I just want to give a brief background on what Pipeline for Progress is. Based on your names here on the attendee list, you probably know a lot about us already. We're a 13-county region. We have 20 colleges and universities in our region, and we have identified a few market differentiators that really make us different from other regions and competitive from other regions, not only around New York State, but around the country as a whole. And we're really talking about attracting a young, vibrant workforce as a way of economic development. So if you look at our model here, back in 2008, we put together an action plan with the help of Cornell University, and it's centered around supporting workforce as kind of the main branch of economic development, which more and more economic development agencies are starting to do. And so really true to a lot of the characteristics that are important to young people that Scott talked about earlier, and the things that we saw in both presentations about the importance of engaging the workforce in their community and connecting them to mentors and community assets and cultural assets. Our role is basically to support those key legs that eventually grow the workforce here. So transportation, work climate, healthcare, urban centers, and education. And you see around the outside just some of the more specific examples of those. We see ourselves, along with other organizations that are similar to ours, as kind of the leadership structure for making all of these things happen and for supporting all these things. Nita and Carrie both talked about the importance of strong partnerships in the region. And kind of our view on that is that the partnerships are really about understanding what's already happening, what other organizations are doing, so that A, we can support those appropriately, and B, so that we're not duplicating things, but rather really highlighting what's already going on. And so we see ourselves again as the structure and leadership that's identifying all of those things in the outer circle, and then just trying to get them to work together through collaboration and eventually build that workforce. And some of the ways that we're doing that go back to the specific examples that we've already heard about. Our first program is aimed at high school students. It's called Students to Workforce, with the theory that Richard Florida introduced, which is if you can get students involved in their communities at an earlier age, you can get them connected and tied into the community and more likely to stay in their community at a later age. So it started in Chemung County back in February when we held this Students to Workforce event. Just to give you a couple of the brief details, what we did is brought in some political leaders, some business leaders, and some unique businesses from around Chemung County to talk to the students about what opportunities are here and what opportunities there might be in the future. And we also had the students sit at tables around the room with other business and community leaders and politicians, so that they could get a pretty good idea of what the environment might be like when they return, when they get back from college. In Jamestown, they decided to hold a similar event. They saw this as kind of a best practice for starting to connect high school students, and so we didn't really even have to go out there. We did a couple of conference calls with Jamestown, and they were able to pull it off on their own. Up in Watkins Glen, the same type of thing happened, but we were much more involved. And we went into Watkins Glen with kind of a be here theme, telling the students that this is the place to be, and again, introducing them to a panel of young professionals who are starting businesses, whether it's a winery or the president of the Chamber of Commerce there in Watkins Glen. Students were able to see pretty clearly what their roles in the community might be after they graduate. So this has been fairly successful for us. The other organization that we're kind of keeping tabs on is called KIC 2020. KIC stands for Catalyst for Intellectual Capital. In 2020 is the year that this group of students wants to reach their goal, which is to attract 20% of Binghamton University students to stay in the community after they graduate. It's a class, actually, that's taught by Dr. Diane Cruz. She's all the way on the right there in the picture. And she sees her students as a super enclave and leads a semester of research where P4P is just one of the kind of mentoring organizations providing a community partnership and some guidance throughout the process. And at the end of each semester, these students give a final project and talk about what their findings have been. So what partnerships in the community do they see as being most important? In each year, they kind of have a theme. So in 2011, Mayor Matt Ryan, who's actually been to a lot of these final projects for KIC 2020, asked that they put together some kind of leadership group for the city of Binghamton, and they want P4P involved in that too, because again, we provided kind of the partnership and guidance throughout the process. So our role is kind of being expanded out in Broome County, and will hopefully act as another best practice throughout our region in trying to attract and retain young professionals. I just want to jump out here and show you a couple of internet sites here. So let's see if I can successfully share my desktop. Does that look like it's working, Heidi?
It is not coming up on our screen. Oh, there it is. We got it. It took a second, but we've got it.
Okay, great. So this is one example of a project that started out in central New York with an organization we partnered with called Center State CEO. They used to be the MBA, Metropolitan Development Association, if anybody's familiar. And this is essentialnyjobs.com. And you'll see on this map of New York that there are actually different regions around the state, and ours obviously is the southern tier and part of the western New York region, where people can actually search for very specific jobs or internships, or they can browse the jobs based on all of these different job types or industries that you see here. And I just want to kind of breeze through these websites so that you have a picture in your mind when I'm talking about them in a minute. And true to technology, the Project ION website, I'll try to refresh it one more time here, is being updated. Project ION stands for Internship Opportunities Now, and except not right now because it's down. So, of course, we'll just move on then to the We Live New York Summit, which is a project that I'll talk about in a minute, but this is the website for that. It was just announced a couple of weeks ago, and registration is open for a major summit, and this is just the new P4P website. See those pictures change there, and there's all of the things that we're working on. So if you want to check out p4pnetwork.com for details on any of this, here's Essential NY Jobs, Project ION, and the We Live New York Summit right at the top here. So let's go back to our presentation. And we'll go back to that presentation. And is that working, Heidi?
Yep, we're all set.
Okay, great. So Project ION, which is the one that you didn't get a chance to see, there's a little screenshot of it. It's a partnership with Center State CEO, as I mentioned, in Syracuse. And between our region and their region, we have 21 counties, 48 colleges and universities, and 210,000 students that we're offering internships to. And we're getting the businesses to buy in. Again, it goes back to that theory that Richard Florida talked about, connecting students to the communities as quickly as possible. So, you know, people who are coming to our region just to go to college, which we have some of the best colleges and universities, not only in the country, but around the world. We have an opportunity now to connect them to their communities as early as possible through a portal like this. The next is Essential New York Jobs. And the reason that this is unique is because it actually takes listings from other job sites like Monster.com and Career Builder, and whenever big businesses like Corning Incorporated or Dresser Rand have internal databases where they post jobs, this website will also crawl those databases with their permission. So again, it's a partnership with Center State CEO, We Live New York, which is Silda Wall-Spitzer's initiative when she was in office, and Empire State Development. It's free for employers. It shows different regional opportunities like I demonstrated with the New York State map there, and the site crawling technology is pretty unique. So we're excited about this, and again, just working on getting employer and student or any kind of interested job applicant involved with it. So that's essentialnyjobs.com. The We Live New York Summit is not entirely unique. Again, it's a Silda Wall-Spitzer initiative. She held a conference back in 2006 up at SUNY Cortland, which is the I Live New York Summit, with the idea that young professionals would come and share their ideas for a vibrant, sustainable upstate New York with the current business leaders and political leaders. And so we're kind of replicating that. We've been planning it since January of this year with 40 Below up in Syracuse. It's going to be hosted at Cornell University on March 24th through the 26th. We're receiving statewide support already And we're right now, again, registration is open, but we're really in the process of trying to get sponsors on board and targeting young professionals, not only as attendees, but as presenters. You know, young professionals are the ones that are planning this. They're in the organizations that are involved with this. And it's really, not to be cliche, but it's planned by young professionals for young professionals with the idea that, you know, we would hopefully brainstorm some ideas for a sustainable upstate New York again. That's pretty much all I wanted to say. I just wanted to breeze through some of those things that we were working on. And again, there's more details if you visit that p4pnetwork.com, our new website there. And we're pretty comprehensive on social media sites. So Facebook and Twitter are great ways to get a hold of us as well. And I will entertain any questions.
Hey, do we have any questions for Sean? While we're waiting for some, I'll just say that I think it's really interesting between all of these models that have been shared, the diversity of young people that are being reached out to and the diversity of models for connecting them to opportunities to stay in the region in their future. So I think that's very impressive. And then I just will mention, I think Nita and Carrie in particular talked about it. I think Sean, you can let us know if P4P is working on that as well, but just the importance of evaluation and being able to track the results for the programs that they're putting together. I think as we share these stories and think about connecting it back to what we know through the research about what young people's interests and needs are, it's really important that we are tracking our progress and working with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really great that some of the research that Scott showed us earlier really backs up what P4P is doing in terms of focusing on strong cultural events, the quality of life, the specific things like childcare, connecting them to mentors early on. Those are the types of things that are really built into the programs that we're doing. And again, you know, the importance of partnerships has been crucial for Pipeline for Progress, especially to get things happening in our region, but to also keep tabs on what some of the other regions are doing around the state, so that you know, we can piggyback on the things that they've been successful at. And you know, when these online things are happening, like Project Ion and Essential New York Jobs, all of that can be tracked. And we've dug right down to figure out ways to even track an internship after it's done. How successful was it, to get kind of feedback forms built in so that interns and internship providers alike can continue to make this a better program, not only in our region again, but across the state.
Okay, so we've got 5 or 10 minutes left, so we do have time for questions if anybody wants to share them. I'll just be quiet for a couple of seconds. And I'll, at this point, open it up to questions for all of the speakers or general comments. Okay, I'm not seeing any. If you do still come up with something as we're finishing up, please send it away. We'll pull it in. So in the meantime, I just want to thank everybody again for joining us and ask that you join me in thanking Scott, Nita, Carrie, and Sean for helping us to better understand some of the opportunities and challenges associated with attracting and retaining young people to and within our communities. I just, again, think this has been great information and appreciate the time that our speakers put into for preparing this. Good stuff. You'll receive an email from me in the next couple of days with a link to an online evaluation of today's webinar, and we ask that you do take the time to fill it out. Your feedback will both be informative for the speakers and help guide future presentation of this material as well as the overall webinar series. And once our web manager has a chance to get it up online, we'll send you a link to the PowerPoint for the presentation, a link to the archived recording of today's presentation, and then also a list of further resources. So some of it was included in the presentation, but we'll also send something as an attached Word document, so you can check out more information about this. And I'll pull in some materials that we know of. There's colleagues, for example, at RUPRI, which is a national organization that's been looking at a lot at young people's aspirations and connecting it to workforce development opportunities. We have colleagues at Penn State that have been doing that, and while we were on today, Rod Howe sent me a link to another recent publication on this, so we'll get those materials to you as well. So. And I just want to let you know that we're lining up at least a couple of other webinars for next spring. They're not finalized yet, but they will be shortly, and we'll send you out information for those. Again, they'll be, we did this one early in December, but it's typically the 4th Tuesday of every month. And if you have some ideas for topics that you'd like to see covered, let us know. We certainly welcome your input. So I guess with that, we will be signing off. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.